Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gayle Carson. Welcome to Living Regret Free, a program that shows you how to live a better and more joyful life. As an added bonus, I invite you to listen to an introduction to my Mindset Matters program, which ties into this so well. Go to www.sobmindset.com. It's free, and I know you will enjoy it. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Gayle Carson, and you know that we are talking about living regret-free today, but I'd like to offer you an invitation to have a private consultation with me if you would like. And if you go to spunkyoldbroad.com and sign into my contact page there and request a conversation with me, we will do that. No obligation, just to getting to know you a little bit and you getting to know me. So I will look forward to it. However, I have a great guest today, and she is Ora Nadrich. She is founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking, and author of Live True, a mindfulness guide to authenticity. She's a certified life coach, a mindfulness teacher, and she specializes in transformational thinking, self-discovery, and mentoring new coaches as they develop their careers. Well, first of all, welcome, Ora. How are you today?
Hi, Gayle. Thank you so much for having me. I'm wonderful.
Oh, great. Well, you know, the big buzzword now is transforming and transformational. Everything today is about being a transformational leader or living a transformed life. So, why do you think right now that your message of living authentically, especially now for the times we're in, is so important?
Well, I think it's what you just said. I think the times that we're in. You know, when we start to hear things like fake news and people are really at a loss to know what is real, what is not, what is, social media interpretation, and people feel blitzkrieged with just way too much. It's just overwhelm. And many people not only feel bombarded, stressed, confused, but they actually don't really know how to discern or delineate between what is real and what is not. That's why I feel it starts with us. We need to know what feels real and authentic to us, and are we living our lives that way? Because if we are, and we're clear about who we are and what we believe is true, it's going to help us be able to discern it outside of ourselves.
Well, that is so true. And you're right on about all the mixed messages we get. As a matter of fact, I was, I don't know, I was just on, not even on on anybody's website. I was just on, I don't even know where I was on the internet. And I saw the same article 4 or 5 times with 4 or 5 different celebrities headlining it. And of course, I'm sure there weren't any of them that were endorsing this, but because it kept changing. So it's true.
Right.
I mean, you really think that something is real and it isn't. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you wanted to say something. I can hear it.
What came to mind, Gayle, when you were saying that, it's interesting, what I call in my first book says who, automatic thoughts that pop up in our mind very instantaneously. And it made me think of when we were little. I don't know if you remember this or you played it. Remember there was a game called Telephone? And you would sit in a circle and you would whisper something in someone's ear, like a sentence. It could be, a prompt. It could be lyrics to a song. And by the time it went around to the last person, it had changed.
I do remember that. I didn't know the name of it. I didn't know it was
I believe it was
Telephone.
called Telephone. It could be called something else. But to me, and mind you, we played that as children. And what was really the goal of the game was to make sure that you kept what was said to you intact.
Exactly, and that's what I remember. Yeah, it was all about.
You know what I mean? You were passing the sentence along. You were reiterating what was whispered in your ear. But really what came down the pike was very different more often than not. I think that's a great metaphor. that by the time things are translated, interpreted, weighed in on, and especially today, because we are bombarded, it's just too much. Too much.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. And then you talk about another buzzword of today, which is mindfulness. And I remember meeting someone, gosh, maybe 6, 7 years ago now, and she was all about mindfulness, and she was about bringing mindfulness into companies. And I thought, oh man, she is going to starve to death because they don't want to hear it. And yet today, she is going strong. So, what made you so passionate about the power of mindfulness, and how did this come to you?
Well, my trajectory, my path, very psychospiritual, for a very long time. I've studied many teachings, many modalities, many techniques, technologies, etc., because I've been on the path of, you said that word, transformation, self-realization, self-actualization. That old quote, know thyself. I've been very interested in the workings of the mind. And for me in particular, my story stems from having a sister that was mentally ill, and which was very devastating, and she's no longer with us. She was a very, very special soul. But, her mental breakdown really impacted me, and it really just changed my whole world around, if you will. So I went on a deep search for that meaning. Mindfulness was something that I discovered along the way, and once I became aware of it, and also as a meditator, because I started meditating young, to sort of, understand how to calm the mind down, how to observe it, and the thousands of thoughts we think in that ahead of ours. When I came upon mindfulness, it just immediately resonated for me, because it really was a way in which we could observe ourselves. And this isn't just about sitting on a meditation pillow or a yoga mat where you sit for 20 minutes and quiet the mind. This is about all the waking moments of our life. And mindfulness, for me, was such a powerful, understanding of the self. And I became a certified mindfulness teacher and a mindfulness meditation teacher. And my work really is devoted to that, and it's an integral part of all of the work that I do. It was part of my first book, Says Who, which was having a mindful awareness of the thoughts that we have, and with that mindful awareness, we can then change them, and that's how I created the Says Who method. And now my new book, Live True, A Mindfulness Guide to Authenticity, is really all about the understanding of who we are. It's really getting to know ourselves better. I think it's really important to do so that we can be clear and healthy and wholesome and have healthy thinking habits, which is something I go in, deeply into both books.
Well, it's interesting. I have to confess, I am not a meditator. I've tried, but my mind is just going all the time. And so, when I sit there and I try to empty my mind, then I fall asleep. Then I fall asleep.
That just shows you how relaxed you get, And then, of course, I just did a workshop at 1440 Multiversity in Scotts Valley in Northern California called Mind, Mood, and Happiness with Dr. Ron Alexander. And a woman came up to me because we were teaching meditation. That was part of the workshop. And she said that very thing. She says, I meditate a lot, but then I start to fall asleep. How can I stop that? And then that takes you to a whole other level of being aware of when you start to be tired so that you can bring your focus and awareness to that. Like, oh, I'm about to fall asleep. And then you become aware of how not to do that. So, and by the way, you not being a meditator and being honest about it, I think is great. There are millions of people who feel like you do. They just don't meditate. They don't know how to meditate. They don't want to meditate. But I really encourage taking time in our very, very busy days, even if you're someone who doesn't want to meditate, and that's perfectly okay, no judgment, but try and sit for at least, I encourage like 10 minutes just to sit quietly somewhere. Even if you're looking at out the window and seeing, the leaves on a tree moving, or, a sunbeam coming through your window, or anything that you can stop the busyness. We need to really incorporate that into our day somehow.
Well, I agree with you. I think that's important. And of course, when I look out my window, all I see is water and boats. But I will also
That's a
say
pretty
that
sight.
I
That
will
sounds
also
very
say
pretty, Gail.
it is. And then of course, when I sit, my cats come on my lap, and then I love petting them, and that's very relaxing to me. But you also talk about training yourself to become fully present, and I know
Mhm.
that. Uh, there's a lot talking about just the power of now, the power of being right in the moment. And
Right.
people have a really difficult time with that. And, well, it doesn't matter what happened in the past. We don't know what the future is. The only thing we can control is right now. So,
Right.
how do you tell people, how do you train them to become more fully present?
Well, I talk a lot about that in Live True, and I say that we oftentimes spend more time than not in two time frames that don't exist. We go back to the past, which has already come and gone, and sometimes we lament what we wish we did differently or it happened
I
differently. And
think we
that's a
often lament. I think we often lament.
absolutely, we do, and that's a total waste of time. And mind you, this is very different than reminiscing or, remembering fond memories. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about how we go back into the past and we can stay on what I call the hamster wheel. And we really do spend an inordinate amount of time there, or we are thinking about the future, which isn't even here yet. And our mind gets occupied with the what ifs, what could happen, what might happen, and it creates worry and concern and anxiety. So where we spend the least amount of time is in the present. I mean, it's just amazing to me that we try to wiggle out of the moments of our lives. And what's really sad, if you will, about that life moves very quickly. And before we know it, we've wasted a lot of time. And you don't want to be taking your last breath wishing you hadn't done that. Do you know? So that's the power of mindfulness, is really to bring that awareness to people and basically say, look, the moments of your life are really important, and if you value them, you're not going to want to hurry them along. Now, that can be easier said than done. So your question, how do you do that? Well, mindfulness, which its definition is being in the present moment with total awareness, and to add to that is with acceptance, non-judgment, and what I like to call the cherry on top, with self-love. And so if or when you're in a moment, you and I are talking, we're engaged in this conversation. I know I certainly am. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch or dinner, and I'm not thinking about what happened yesterday. I'm really here. I'm present. I'm in this conversation because I want to be. You have to want to be present. You have to want to value what you're doing enough to also what I call show up for it, like 100%. So this takes training, this takes practice, and, not to go be hard on yourself, but like if or when we're starting to get out of a moment, how often do we listen to people and our mind starts to wander? And what I say is the minute you start to see yourself thinking about other things, note to self, and I have a lot of note to self in Live True. Oh, my mind is wandering. Let me bring my focus and awareness back to this moment so that I can really listen to this person who's talking to me and really give them my undivided attention, which really shows that I'm respectful of their time. These are the acts of mindfulness, which is really, in essence, being a thoughtful person to ourselves and to others. So the very
Well,
beginning,
yeah,
Gail, is the
yeah.
steps of I'm aware that my mind is wandering. Let me bring my focus and awareness back to this moment, which is really the essence of meditation, that when your mind starts to wander, you bring it back to the breath. And it starts
Yeah.
to help the mind to be disciplined, really.
But it does take that. It does take discipline, and it does take that ability to get started like that. And but it's a challenge. It's a challenge for a lot of people, and
Yes,
but I think it's a
it is.
necessary challenge. And you also talk about the judgmental inner voice. And that's when I shoulda, coulda, woulda. comes in, and we always say, and that I guess that goes back to what you were saying about, um, not remembering things that in a good way, but lamenting what we have not done that we wanted to do. So how do we get away from a judgmental inner voice? I mean, I would assume a lot of it comes from, first of all, our upbringing and what we were raised
Yes.
with, and being told whether we did things well or we didn't do things well, and whether we were smart or whether we were dumb and stupid. So how do you get away from that?
It's so true, and I talk about that a lot in Says Who, my first book, because so much of what was told to us in childhood we bring into adulthood. And my second question of the Says Who method is, have I heard someone say this thought before? Because a lot of the people that I've worked with will connect to the first time they heard something in childhood when they were told they were stupid, they told they were, absent-minded, they were told they weren't going to be good at sports, or they weren't pretty enough, or they weren't thin enough. And unless you really work through that, you're going to carry those, what they become our core beliefs, into adulthood. So we all have the inner critic. It's there. It's real. We all have negative thoughts. My teachings are not about the fact that, let's just think positive thoughts all the time, positive, 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 and we're never going to think a negative thought again. That's not real. But we need to know how to work with it, and we need to know how to, to use your first word, is those pop words today, transformation. How do we transform negative thoughts into positive thoughts? Again, it's being aware of when that negative thought comes up, and to what I offer up in Says Who is a technique called release and replace. If you just released a negative thought and replaced it with its positive counterpart, you're starting to build a healthy, new healthy thinking habit, which builds new neural pathways with all the neuroscience that they're discovering and how we literally can change our brain. It's fascinating. So what do? We take these little steps. We start to be, again, mindful of when we begin to tell ourselves, I'm stupid, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, no one's going to love me, I'm never going to get that job I want, on and on and on. And by the way, what I say in Live True is substitute the inner critic with a constructive advisor. We can tell ourselves how to do things differently, but let's be constructive about it. Let's not throw ourselves under the bus. Let's not sabotage ourselves. Let's not say these horrible things to ourselves. What good is it? It doesn't help us. It just makes us feel worse about ourselves. So even these little beginning steps, and this is really what it's about, Gayle, we all can say, that's so hard, that's so challenging, that's never going to change. But I can tell you without any doubt that if you stick to this and you practice these skill sets daily, you will see a change in the way you think.
Well, I totally agree with you. I happen to be, I happen to be a very positive thinker. Everybody that listens to me knows that. But it's, it is kind of difficult when you've been raised a certain way. I was really, really fortunate. My parents were, it was amazing. People really were amazed. They let me get away with things that most parents would not let them get away with, and gave me a structure that was still strict. I remember at the age of 13, I was coloring my hair, and everybody said, how can you let her do that? And my mother said, well, this should be the worst thing she does, and it's fine, and it was. And, I always kind of was out front with everything that I did. I was a tomboy, and just lots of things that I did. And she said, well, that's okay. But when it came down to how I answered the phone, or the fact that I had to be nice to people, or that I had to say thank you and excuse me, those were things she was serious about. But the other things, she said, look, you're or like all my friends were, if they got a good grade, they got money. And my mother said, no, you don't get money. You've got the brains and you come home with the good grades, So it was just a different kind of parenting. And it worked really well for me. And she just, a lot of things, as I say, that most parents would be upset with, She just said, no, that's her, and she's expressing herself, and that's okay. So,
Well,
yeah, it
boy,
was very
you're very fortunate, because what I hear in the way you describe the way your mother brought you up, which I think was very balanced, in that she let you be you, which is really a lot of what I talk about, live true, about the authentic self. And I think that's a great way for us to bring up our children. And I try to implement that myself. I'm a mother of 2 sons, and I always say I let my children let me know who they are. I don't tell them who they are.
Yeah,
They,
and that is so
I
important. Yeah,
It
you're right.
really is, along with those disciplinarian, what I want to say is, whether it's rules or advice, again, about how to be a conscious, kind person, which it sounds like she was teaching you that, but also letting you be who you are and expressing yourself. And that's, to me, a very important way to bring up our children, because, more often than not, we see these very sad situations of people that talk about that in adulthood, that my parents wanted me to be what they wanted me to be. They didn't accept me for who I was.
Yeah,
And
I
I
can
deal with
tell
a
you. I
lot
mean,
of people like that.
she was not always happy with my choices. I mean, in the late 50s, I moved away from home. I finished college, and 5 days later, I was in Miami, and she wasn't thrilled about that. But I had always been told, when you finish college, you have to have a job. And so this is where I wanted to live, and this is what I wanted to do. So, she wasn't thrilled about that. And I remember my dad making, or my mom, somebody made reservations or something on a train, and I said, I am not taking 2 days to get to Florida. I said, I'm going on a plane, and I had saved up some money, and I got made my plane reservation, and down I came. But let's tell our people, let's tell our audience how to find you, Ora. So where can they go to find you? What's your website?
Well,
And
very easy. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, and where can they buy your books? And if there's something you want to give away to our audience, we're certainly open to that.
Well, first of all, Ora Nadrich, which is my name, OraNadrich, is my social media handles across the board. That's how you can access my website, all the social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on all of it. So it's my name again, Ora Nadrich. And as far as getting my book, I'm on all the book outlets, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Bookstores carry me. I don't know where people live and what's local to them, which can be ordered. But I find the fastest way to get my book really is Amazon and or Barnes and Noble. You can get my book in like 2 days later, I think. So that's pretty fast. And email me. I give away. As a matter of fact, it's something that we're working on right now. I did 30 audio meditations, because I have 30 meditations in Live True, and they're so beautiful. And now they're on they're on the music platforms like iTunes and Spotify and Pandora. And if somebody wants them, they can reach out to me, and I will give them access to it for free, even though you can go on those music sites. They're just, like I said, so lovely. We've just completed them, and they're absolutely beautiful. Very calming, very soothing, I might add. It's to music, and it's a beautiful visual. So I'm more than happy to offer those up to people.
Fantastic. So again, if you want to find Ora, again, it's not complicated. Ora, O-R-A, Nadrich, Nadrich.com, and she's that way across Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and so forth. So you can find her anywhere, and you can find her books on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever you want to get them, or at her website as well. And I want to remind everybody that you can go to my website, spunkyoldbroad.com, and go to the contact page. Let me know you'd like to have a little conversation with me, and there's no obligation. I would love to be able to do that for you, and I will be happy to get in touch with you. Ora, this has been absolutely terrific. I think that people really need to understand what mindfulness is. I think people need to be open and willing to transformation. And I think that absolutely They have to be much more present. Let's not, it's so hard, it's so complicated in our world today to not be concerned with what was and what will be, but just to concentrate on what is. We'd just be so much stronger and so much happier. So I really think
Absolutely.
you're
Yes.
providing a really well needed service, and I can't stress that enough, because people need people like you. I'm very linear and this is the way you got to do it. I'm a very linear person.
Yes.
But
that's good too. But that's good too, Gayle. We need all of that.
Yeah,
for
but we really need you too. So I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I know our audience and our listeners really got a lot out of it, and I wish you only the best in the future.
Oh, thank you so much, Gayle, for having me. I so enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. I choose my guests carefully, so if you have someone you'd like me to interview, please drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com. In the meantime, check out my intro program, Mindset Matters, at www.sobmindset.com. See you next week.